The food truck stood at the corner of a crowded city street, squeezed between a bus stop and a glowing convenience store. Neon signs reflected off the metal sides of the truck while steam rose into the cool evening air, carrying the smell of freshly cooked flatbreads, grilled vegetables, and spices. Cars honked impatiently in the distance as office workers, tired after long shifts, slowly formed a line. Inside the truck, Aisha moved with practiced speed. Her hands flipped flatbreads, filled boxes, and counted change almost automatically. Sweat beaded lightly on her forehead, but she didn't stop. This truck was her only source of income, and every order mattered. She had learned long ago that pausing, even for a moment, meant falling behind. Her eyes looked tired, not just from the long hours, but from years of responsibility. Bills, rent, and family needs weighed on her mind as heavily as the hot pan in front of her. She didn't notice faces anymore, only orders, voices, and money passing from hand to hand. The line grew shorter, and then a man stepped forward quietly. He was well-dressed, but not in an obvious way. A simple coat, clean shoes, and a calm posture set him apart. He didn't check his phone or complain about the wait. He simply stood there, observing the small details, the rhythm of Aisha's work, the way she brushed flour from the counter, the faint crease of exhaustion on her face. When it was his turn, Aisha didn't look up. "Next," she said flatly, her voice neutral and efficient. He ordered politely, his tone soft, almost careful. She packed the food, took the payment, and slid the box across the counter. Their hands nearly touched, but she didn't notice. Her focus was already on the next customer. The man didn't move right away. He studied her face for a moment, something familiar pulling at his memory. Her eyes, her voice, even the way she stood, it stirred a feeling he couldn't immediately place. Years had passed, faces had changed, but some moments never truly faded. Aisha, unaware of his pause, had already turned away, calling out another order and reaching for fresh dough. To her, he was just another customer in a long line, another transaction in an exhausting day. The man finally stepped aside, holding the warm food box in his hands. He glanced back once more, a quiet certainty settling in his chest. She didn't recognize him, but he was sure of one thing. This meeting was not a coincidence. As the man stepped aside, holding the warm food box carefully, a flood of memories came rushing back, vivid and unshakable. It was nearly a decade ago, a bitterly cold winter night when he had nothing to his name. His jacket was thin and threadbare, the sleeves worn to frays at the edges. His shoes had holes, letting the icy wind bite at his feet with every step. In his wallet, there was barely a coin, a handful of cents that couldn't buy him even the smallest meal. He had stumbled past that very street, shivering and hungry, desperation clouding his mind. The city felt indifferent then. The streets were full of busy strangers, wrapped in scarves and coats, rushing home to warmth. And in the midst of that indifferent crowd, a small food truck caught his eye. Steam rose from it, carrying the scent of fresh bread and spices that made his stomach growl painfully. Inside, a young woman worked tirelessly, moving with a rhythm that suggested both skill and exhaustion. She noticed him standing at the corner, frozen from the cold. Without a word, she handed him a warm flatbread, wrapped carefully in paper. He hesitated, ashamed and embarrassed that he couldn't pay. "You can take it," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "When you can, help someone else." Her words had stuck with him long after that night ended. They weren't just a gesture of kindness. They were a lesson in humanity, one he had carried like a compass through the years. He remembered the warmth of that bread, the light in her eyes, and the way she didn't judge him despite his poverty. Back then, he had been a dreamer with big plans but no means, an aspiring entrepreneur struggling to survive. He had promised himself he would make something of his life, not for wealth, but so that he could honor that small act of kindness. Now, standing before the same young woman, the contrast was staggering. Today, he was the CEO of a global company worth millions, someone whose face and name appeared in news articles, boardrooms, and business magazines. He wore tailored clothes and walked with confidence. Yet inside, he still carried the humility of that freezing night. She had no idea who he was. She didn't recognize the man behind the suit, the one who had once been desperate and invisible. And he wasn't angry. He understood. She was busy, focused, carrying the same determination he had admired in her years ago. But the memory of her kindness, the one act that had changed his path, made him certain of one thing. Some connections, no matter how brief, never truly fade. The man inhaled, feeling that old warmth return. He would let her remember, in her own time, the night that had unknowingly shaped both their lives. As the man turned to leave, he paused, almost instinctively. Something inside him urged him to stay a moment longer. Slowly, he stepped back toward the counter, his movements deliberate but quiet, careful not to draw the attention of the growing line of customers behind him. His hand rested on the edge of the counter, holding the warm food box, but his focus was entirely on her. Aisha was wiping her hands on a cloth, her back partially turned, eyes scanning for the next customer. She was so absorbed in the rhythm of her work, the sizzling of flatbreads, the hum of the food truck heater, the chatter of passers-by, that she didn't notice him at first. Then he leaned slightly forward, lowering his voice, the words soft but steady. "Still remember me?" The words seemed to cut through the noise of the street, the hissing of the grill, and the hum of passing traffic. Aisha froze mid-motion. Her hand lingered in the air, the cloth pressed lightly against her palm. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting his, and for the first time that evening, she looked at him. Not just saw him, but really looked. The man's eyes held a quiet familiarity, calm and patient, yet intense enough to make her pause. There was something in the way he carried himself, the subtle warmth behind his gaze, that tugged at a memory she had long tucked away. Then, suddenly, it all came flooding back. The bitter winter night, the shivering young man at the edge of the street, the way she had handed him that flatbread without expecting anything in return. Her eyes widened, her lips parting in shock as recognition dawned. "You, the man from that winter night?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, half in disbelief, half in awe. A small smile curved his lips, gentle and reminiscent of a shared secret. "Yes," he replied softly, "and I never forgot what you did for me." The words hung in the air, heavier than any conversation she had heard that day. She blinked rapidly, trying to process the reality before her. This was the man whose life she had touched in such a fleeting moment, now standing before her, successful and confident, yet still carrying the humility of the person he once was. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, not sadness, but the overwhelming weight of memory, recognition, and the simple beauty of kindness returned. Her hands, which had been so busy a moment ago, dropped to her sides, and for a brief, suspended moment, the bustling street, the steam, the city noise, all of it faded. He waited patiently, watching her process the revelation, knowing that some memories took a moment to catch up with reality. And in that shared silence, a bridge formed between their past and present, a connection that neither distance nor time could ever erase. The following morning, Aisha's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Rubbing the sleep from her eyes, she answered, expecting another routine call from a supplier or a reminder about a delivery. Instead, the calm, familiar voice of the man from the previous night came through, polite yet warm. "I wanted to speak with you personally," he began. "About your food truck." Aisha blinked in confusion, her mind racing. "My food truck?" she repeated, unsure where this conversation was headed. "Yes," he said gently. "I remember what you did for me years ago. You helped me when I had nothing, and that act of kindness stayed with me. I want to help you now." Her heart skipped a beat. She had never imagined that the small gesture she had offered on a freezing night could come back to touch her life so profoundly. She listened in disbelief as he explained that he wanted to invest in her food truck business, not for publicity, not for recognition, but purely to give her a chance to grow. His investment would allow her to expand into multiple locations, upgrade equipment, hire staff, and finally take the burden off her shoulders. "There are no conditions," he assured her. "No strings attached. I just want to give back in the way you once gave to me." Aisha's voice trembled as she tried to express her gratitude. I don't know what to say. I can't believe this. You remembered me?" He chuckled softly. "I never forgot. You fed me when I was invisible. This is just returning the favor." That evening, Aisha stood outside her food truck, now polished and newly painted with a bright, welcoming design. She had hired a few extra hands to help with the line, but she herself stood at the counter, greeting every customer with a radiant smile. The street smelled of sizzling flatbreads, fresh spices, and something more intangible, a sense of hope and accomplishment. As she handed over the first orders of the evening, she glanced at each face in line, seeing the same eagerness, hunger, and fatigue she had seen in so many others over the years. But now, her perspective had shifted. She understood how small gestures, small acts of kindness, could ripple outward in ways one could never predict. With every customer she served, she felt a quiet, steady joy. The memory of that freezing winter night, the small connection she had made, and the man who had returned the kindness now fueled her determination. Her heart was light, her spirit lifted, and for the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not just by her customers, but by the world at large. And as the city lights glimmered on the busy street, Aisha realized that kindness, no matter how small or unnoticed at the time, always finds its way back, often when one least expects it. The circle had closed, but its warmth lingered, spreading quietly through her heart and the lives she touched every day.